Welcome to a review of the AR and Collections Manager by Dynamics Nav add-ons. We're going to divide this presentation into several parts. This first part is going to deal with the concept of AR and Collections Manager and the daily usage and functions. The second part will deal with the setup, and the third part will deal with the new functions that we've recently added dealing with managing write-offs of remaining amounts of invoices. So let's talk about the AR and Collections Manager and what it is. Essentially, it is a specialized contact manager designed specifically for accounts receivable to manage all aspects of accounts receivable in an organized fashion, set follow-up dates, and track promises through until invoices are paid off. So let's take a look at a little bit of how we do this. We're in Nav 2013 R2, and we click on Departments, and we've added a function to financial management called Debt Collection. And under Administration, we have all of the functions that we've created for the AR and Collections Manager. In this movie, we're going to be dealing primarily with these first two. Now you'll notice that we call these Generate and Update Exceptions and an Exception List. An exception is any transaction in AR that does not follow the normal process of creation of the invoice, satisfaction in a timely manner, and then posting through to history and disappearing from the list. So this could be unapplied payments, it could be unapplied credit memos, it could be overdue invoices, it could be invoices in dispute, it could be any number of different things, which is why we call them exceptions rather than overdue invoices. So the function is first that we're going to, on a daily basis, or as often as we're going in to make collection, to perform collections activity, to generate and update exceptions. Generate and update exceptions queries the database to look for any new exceptions that have been created since the last time it was run, things that have met the criteria that we'll examine in the next movie, and then update existing exceptions to reflect any payments that have been made and potentially have them drop off the list. So the first thing that a person does before they go in is they run the routine generate and update exceptions, which this field right here allows users to limit how far back in time the system is going to query, which is particularly useful for exceptionally large databases that have been in use for many, many years. There's no need to go back to day one. So we click OK, and the system says we're going to run this report as of 3/2015, and since I'm running the 2013 R2 database and data doesn't start until January of 2015, I had to set the work date ahead. So we'll say yes, we're going to continue, and it runs through and generate and update exceptions. OK. So the next thing that the person will do is open up the exceptions list, and they will be able to view the exceptions for the customers that are assigned to them specifically, or if they're part of a work group, which we'll deal with on the next movie, they may be able to see exceptions that have been assigned to multiple people. If they're supervisory, they may be able to view their own exceptions as well as the exceptions for people that report to them. So let's take a look at the exception list. This is the exception list, which you can see shows a tremendous amount of information. The first time it's run, all of the next contact dates will be the same. You'll see who the customer is and what type of an exception it is. In this case, we have a couple unapplied credit memos. We have several overdue invoices. We have, if we slide down, we can see that we've previously contacted the Beef House, and one of these is an unapplied credit memo, and several are invoices. And you can see they have a next contact date of 3/27, which hasn't occurred yet. So we will need to start at the top to work through the activity. Also on the screen, you can see what the invoice date was, what the due date was, if they had promised to make a payment, is this a new or a follow-up transaction? Is it overdue or extraordinary invoice? There are several different categories. Who was the last rep to contact them? And so forth. These three columns we're going to deal with in the third movie. These are relatively new, and we'll talk about their usage in the third movie. So there are two ways to proceed from here. We can either click on an individual invoice. For example, let's take a look at something from the Canon Group. And we can click on the exception manager, which will show us details about this individual invoice. So we can see that this is a new exception, has never been contacted before. There's the invoice amount. We can see that this was the due date of the invoice. This was the original amount. There have been no payments or credits applied against it. And there are not multiple invoices for this customer. It is not dispute, and it is not partially paid on time. So if the person making the collection call needs more information about the customer, they can go to Navigate and they can see a huge amount of information. They can see summaries of existing comments that have been made. They can see customer history, customer invoice payment history, how fast have they paid other invoices. They can transfer this exception to another rep or to their supervisor. They can add new comments, delete it if they decide that this doesn't need to be followed up on. They can view the original invoice, the customer card, the customer ledger entries, statistics, aging report, all of the various different functions that are in Nav that are spread out all over the landscape are available from this one screen. So after the rep has a pretty good idea of what's going on, they would then make a call. Now, this is one, and they would go to Home and they would click on Create a New Contact Event. This is one way that we could manage them. On the other hand, we could also go into we could use the function Customer Data. Customer Data recognizes that there may be multiple entries for a single customer, and we want to deal with them all at once. So we click on View all exceptions for this customer, and we can see that there are lots of exceptions for this particular customer. We have an unapplied credit memo. We have several. We have some overdue invoices, and we'll talk about extraordinary value invoices in the next movie. So this doesn't have the detail about individual lines, but it shows all of the available lines. Now, at this point, again, we have the ability to look up at the Navigate ribbon and see all of the information that we had available to us in the Exception Manager. And in fact, we could, if we wanted to, click on an individual line and run over to the Exception Manager and see details about individual transactions. However, it makes most sense to make a call about all of them at once. So at this point, we're going to go over to Home and create a new contact event. So we click on New Contact Event, and we're going to specify who we're going to contact. So in this case, we have several contacts set up. These contacts are specific to the AR and Collections Manager. You can add new contacts on the fly. So let's say that we're going to speak with Andy Teal. And Andy fills in, and then we're going to specify the action that we're about to take, and this is a list that would be created by each individual company to reflect the activities that they would use in normal collection activities. And so now let's just make this a little bit wider, and you can see at the bottom of the screen that we have a list of all of the outstanding invoices if we need to refer to them. So we're ready to make the call, and we make the call over to Andy. We don't know yet what the revised promise to pay date. This is a crucial field that we always fill in because we're always going to ask for when payment will be made, and we're going to record what the person we're speaking with tells us. So we say, make this just a little bit wider. We say, Andy said that he would make payment next week. Okay, so we're going to keep a record of the fact that he said that. And so now we're going to record the fact what his promise to pay date is. So this is going to be, we're now on, well, let's see, let's set this calendar to reflect what our work date said, which is March 20th. Oop, one too far. March 20th. So now he said that he was going to make payment next week. So let's say that he makes the payment by Thursday of next week. So now we need to say what's going to be the next contact date. Well, it doesn't make any sense to contact him on the 27th if he's not going to make payment until the 26th. So we need to give him a little bit of time to make the payment, mail the check, for us to receive the check. So we're going to say that if by April 4th we have not received it, we will be contacting Andy again to ask him what happened. So we're going to now say that we want to copy this function. This comment needs to be copied for all of the, come on, all of the lines. Well, let's say that it applies to these 4 lines. So we click OK, and the next contact date has been established, okay, for these lines. All of these lines are now the next contact date, and the promise to pay date has been set up. So now we're ready to say OK, and we leave this screen, and this will all resort, so all of the Canon group will flow back so that the next contact date, when we exit and refresh the screen, system's working a little slow today. And we should see that all of the Canon group entries have been resorted down to April 4th. So now we go back to the top and continue work on the ones that we have at the top and work through the list. So the next ones we would go down and perform essentially the same activity, go in, examine what's going on, make contact, record what the person tells us, and then have the list resort. So that as we work through this list, the next contact dates will automatically update. Now, if the customer makes payment as they say they will, then it will be recognized and they will fall off the list. And if they don't, they'll float to the top of the list. And when you open it up, you'll be able to see what the previous comments were. Let's open up one that we did before, and well, let's close one of them and go to the exception manager so we can see the comments. So in this case, I simply wrote test, and we have this as a follow-up. There's the time. There's who we spoke with. Okay, and there's all of the information, the history of all of our contacts. And again, we can go in and make another call. This, in fact, was an unapplied credit memo, so that means that we need to do an application. How would we do that? We'd go to Navigate, make a copy of this document number, jump over to the customer ledger entries, and perform the application just as you normally would. Hit escape and you're back into the exception manager, and then when you next time you run the generate and update exceptions, the application will show up and the item will disappear from the list. This is what the everyday usage entails. It's extremely simple to use and extremely effective. So this ends the first part of the demonstration movies. Thank you.